Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror in film, television, books, and popular culture. Well, hello once again, everyone. Welcome to another show. My name is Bruce Markison. As always, I'm joined by producer and co-host Tracy Asteria. Tracy, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. It's a busy week getting kids ready to go back to school. And I've been researching some horror conventions that are coming up. And so I'm a little jealous. There's a fantastic one in Niagara Falls coming up in October 25th and 26th. They have some really cool guests, and I really want to go, but I'm probably not going to go. But the exciting guest that they just introduced yesterday is Richard Dreyfuss. He is going to be there, which is amazing. And so it's Frightmare in the Falls at Niagara Falls, Canada.
Yeah.
So they got like wonderful guests: Dee Wallace, Henry Thomas, Bill Moseley, Daniel Roebuck, David Arquette, Tom Atkins, Michael Berryman. Like it's the who's who of horror history. Like they are there, and there's tons more of fantastic guests. So if anybody gets to go, I would love to hear some feedback.
Well, you've got to go. How far are you from Niagara Falls?
Quite a distance. It's about probably a 2-hour plane ride. And the tickets are actually really reasonable. They're only like 70 Canadian dollars for a weekend pass. And if you want to go all out, they have a VIP package, which is phenomenal for like $350 Canadian.
Yeah.
That is amazing for the guest lineup that they have.
Now, do you have a fear of flying?
It depends. I kind of go through the spells where I do have a little bit of anxiety with flying. And unfortunately, right now, just given everything that's going on in the world, I'm a little anxious to fly.
Okay.
And I don't have time to
any
drive.
other way to go besides flying? Can you take another way?
Well, there's driving, but I would be paranoid to drive the giant highway all the way to Toronto.
Okay. All right.
Oh, dear.
And you said it's not that expensive, right?
No, it is like super reasonable, I was just so impressed when I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should go, Bruce.
Well, I've been to one this year, and we're going to talk about that with our guest coming up in a moment. But I want to see you get out of the house.
I know, right?
It's one of these conventions, and that lineup that you mentioned is just fantastic. I don't know how much the hotel would be.
I don't know. I'm kind of researching it, though. You never know. It's not until October 25th and 26th. Yeah. And this evening I'm in my library, so a different part of the house.
All right. Yeah, it is different.
It is different.
Yeah, I like it. Very nice. All right. Well, I'll tell you, we have a convention coming up in our area in Syracuse, Scaricon, which was a pretty big event in central New York for many years. We have not had any Scaricons, though, since 2019. Wow. The 2020 event was canceled, not because of COVID, but because really was no longer economically feasible for the organizers to put it on. But they have figured out a way to do it, and they are going to have an event. Daniel Roebuck, whom you just mentioned, is among the celebrity guests, and I'm considering going as well. So
nice.
If I do end up going, I'll certainly let you know about that.
Oh, that sounds like fun, Bruce.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna continue to work, though, on this event, Niagara Falls. I think it's very important for you to go and to do interviews and have a lot of fun. So I'm not going to give up on that idea just yet. In the meantime, this week, we are going to welcome back as our guest, writer, blogger, and horror film historian Dan Day. Dan writes the Hitless Wonder Movie Blog. He is a historian with tremendous knowledge of the Universal Studios classics and also Hammer films. And for many years, speaking of conventions, he has attended the annual Monster Bash conference in Pennsylvania. And there he has come to know a number of actors and fellow writers. In fact, I saw Dan at this year's Monster Bash in June. We'll talk about that in a moment. Dan, welcome back to the Ghostly Gallery. How you doing?
Pretty good, and I'm always glad to be here. I'm thankful and amazed that you invited me back again. I think this is the third time, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love talking.
Why are you amazed? Do you think you haven't done this?
I'm amazed anybody want to listen to me talk, but hey, if they want to, hey, that's fine. That's great.
Well, I listened to you talk a lot at Monster Bash. We hung
Yeah,
out. We had dinner together with Frank Delastrito and his wife Linda, and we went to a number of the programs, sat next to each other. So
and you
you're
were
always welcome here.
and you were taking notes at Monster Bash, which really I thought that was great. I looked over and he's jotting stuff down. I thought, is that his grocery list? No, he's taking
Yeah.
notes. That's it's quite impressive, and with a pencil and actual paper. So,
Yeah, yeah. I took notes on Greg Mank's presentation on Murders in the Rue Morgue, and then I took notes on Frank Delastrito's program on the same movie, Murders in the Rue Morgue, and I went to several other programs during the course of the weekend. I always like to take notes. I never know what I'm going to use on the show here. Never know when I'm going to refer to this stuff again. So
yeah,
yeah, I like to do it. I enjoyed the material. I like being reminded about what I've seen, and every once in a while, somebody says something that's really interesting, and usually Craig and Frank in particular. So yeah, it's always a good idea, I think, to write things down. So I saw you at this year's event. You've been going for many, many years. I've only been to 3. How would you say this year's event stacked up with some of the other years you've done in the past?
um, I think it's getting to the point now because I first started going there. I believe it was 2012. And there were a
2012.
few years where I attended both the summer and the fall, which
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to go to the fall one this year because economically it adds I mean it adds up. Um, but I think it's getting to the point now where the real reason I go, number one, Frank Delastrito and Greg Mank literally asked me personally to go, which
Yeah.
if those guys want me to go, then that's it's kind of hitting half right there. But I mainly go just for the people that I see over and over again. It's not so much the guest and I did spend some money. Um, but I think it's just almost like it's almost just like an annual event for me. Just like you talking to Tracy about that event in New York, just a way to get out of the house and you kind of plan your summer around it and that sort of thing. And there's so many people that I've gotten to know there over the years. Like I basically almost the entire staff. So it's almost like a family reunion type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Just seeing the people that you've become friends with, or at least acquaintances with, it's worth it for that. And then almost like the guests that they have and the merchandise that you can buy and the things you can look at, sort of the icing on the cake. So
Yeah.
I had a great time. This was the first time I had been to this hotel in the past years. It was a different hotel that was
Mhm.
located in a slightly different place.
Yeah.
I thought this hotel was good. I knew it was going to be different setup, but there was a large room where you could see the presentations and the films. There was also a large vendor's room. There was an area for the actors and the celebrities and the other guests to be in. There was a nice restaurant there. We enjoyed it. Sue and I, my wife and I went, and we both had a good time. And we really didn't have to leave the hotel all that much. Pretty much everything was there for us. So it
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
was a lot of fun.
in that area, I mean, if you do have to leave to get something to eat or whatever, I mean, there's plenty of places. It's everything's within pretty decent drive, and it for me, I mean, it's pretty easy to get to. Of course, I live in South Bend. That's far away, but all I have to do is basically get on the toll road and just literally it'll take you straight there. So
Yeah. Yeah, you have a long drive. We had about a 6-hour drive, but
that's about what mine averages
yeah,
out to be.
we can handle 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 hours. I'm getting at the age where anything beyond that is hard to do in one day, but 6, I
Mhm.
think we can handle
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Well, always a good time at Monster Bash and always a good time talking about classic horror. So the last time we had Dan on the show, which was a while ago, we discussed with him his favorite horror films of the 1930s. Frankenstein, Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein, among those we went through. This time around, we thought we'd move up a little bit in time, first half of the 1940s, And we have 8 different films that Dan wanted to talk about. So let's jump right in, Dan. The very first one debuted March 5th, 1943. And this one is Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. I'll give you a brief synopsis, even though I know you know the film. So at this point, we have a tormented Lawrence Talbot, now in an asylum, manages to escape, seeks out Dr. Frankenstein in the hope that the doctor can basically help him die. Talbot is fed up with his existence as part man, part wolfman, dealing with the full moon every month. It's gotten to be too much. So he just wants to end things. He then discovers that Dr. Frankenstein is already deceased, but he does meet the doctor's daughter, the beautiful Baroness Elsa. He then ends up traveling to the ruins of the Frankenstein castle, and that's where he does find the monster completely encased in ice. Talbot frees the monster, but that only leads to more complications the rest of the way. Now, in this film, we have Lon Chaney Jr., of course, returning in his dual role as Talbot and the Wolfman, and he's excellent as always. The film, though, is really most notable for the casting of Bela Lugosi as the Frankenstein monster. And at first, when this film was being planned, developed, the idea was to have the monster speak. But apparently, the producers found Lugosi's delivery of the lines somewhat laughable. At least that's some of the reports we've read. And the producers basically said, you've got to remove those lines, make the creature silent, which really ended up shortening the film and reducing Lugosi's role. Dan, is this your understanding of what happened, or have you heard about any other possible theories about why Lugosi's lines were completely cut out?
No, that's basically, I've read that in various sources. I know Greg Mank has talked about it in many of the books that he's written. The thing is, if you remember in the film before, which leads up to Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, the ghost of Frankenstein, Igor's brain, who Igor was played by Bela Lugosi, was transferred into the monster's body. So it actually makes kind of sense to have Lugosi play the monster, because technically the monster is now Igor.
Yeah.
But the scenes with there's, and of course this is one of the great legends of classic horror, is what would this film, what are these scenes, what would these scenes have been like? Because apparently they don't exist. There's stills of some of these scenes. What would this film have been like if you had Lugosi talking, having discussions with Lawrence Talbot? And apparently the producers saw this and thought, oh, this isn't going to work. Although, like I said, technically Igor is the monster now, so it would make sense. And the other thing in the movie, which they don't really point out, is the monster is now blind, because the operation in which Igor's brain was placed into the monster caused the monster to be blind. So when you see Lugosi stumbling about, that's because the monster is blind. That's not really explained in the film.
Yeah.
So people look at it, and if they don't know the backstory, oh my God, Lugosi's terrible. He has, not only is Lugosi's scenes cut down, but half of the time you see the monster in the movie, it's actually a stunt person, because Lugosi was about 60 years old at this point.
Right.
And for even somebody, a younger person, to put up all that makeup, because remember, back in those days, they're literally slathering stuff all over you. Nowadays they have, probably a lot more shortcuts that way. A 60-year-old Lugosi with all that stuff on, he couldn't, there's certain things that he just couldn't do. So like I said, when you look back at the movie now, you think, oh my God, Lugosi was miscast and he was terrible. If you know the backstory of it, you kind of understand, why he has the role. But I have to say, at that point in his life and in his career, I think having Lugosi play the monster probably wasn't the best idea in the world. I've also heard and read that Lon Chaney Jr. was supposed to be the Wolfman and the monster. But the makeup alone, when you think about how long it would take Jack Pierce to turn Lon into the Wolfman and then take all that stuff off and turn him back into the monster, they Universal figured that this just is, it's just way too complicated and it's not going to work. You also have to realize that Lon Jr. could be a bit disagreeable at times, and I think they also probably factored that in as well. So Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is probably more famous for what it could have been or what it might have been than what it is. But I still think it's a pretty good movie overall, and it's one of, I can't really think of any other, one of the first movies that creates a multiverse. It's a historically important film. I mean, now you see that stuff happening all the time. We've had, Jason versus Freddy, Alien versus Predator, and back then I'm pretty sure no studio ever did anything like that at all.
Right. That's right. They talk about the monster rallies, and I guess technically those were when 3 monsters appeared, but you could make an argument this is really the first monster rally because you do have 2. In both the Wolfman and Frankenstein. I'm glad you brought up the point about Lugosi's character being blind. And that explains why, when he is seen, he's walking with his arms outstretched, because he's sort of feeling around. He can't see. He's trying to feel around to see if anything is in front of him. And I actually thought that was very effectively done by Lugosi. And it actually becomes the template for future portrayals of the monster. Glenn Strange among them in the 3 later Frankenstein films. So this is a little bit of history being made. This is the first time Frankenstein walking with the arms outstretched. And whenever any kid the decades since does a parody or an imitation of Frankenstein, we always do it as kids or even as adults with our arms outstretched. So give Lugosi some credit for that, right?
Yeah, and it's true. But once again, most people don't know that, and even a lot of monster fans still, say, "Oh, he still wasn't. It still wasn't that good of a portrayal." But once again, he's portraying it the way it was. It was in the script. I'm sure the director, Roy William Neal, who was a very good director, we'll be talking about him later with The Scarlet Claw. I'm sure he told Lugosi, this is how the monster has to be portrayed. The monster is weak. That's the whole point of the movie, is the monster is weak. He's blind. He's essentially a different person.
Yeah.
So, and that leads up to the climax where the monster is fully revived. And then they have, the great fight between the Wolfman and the monster, which doesn't last long enough. It goes by pretty quickly, but it's still a pretty good capper to the film.
One of the fun features of this movie, and this is something that they recreate at the Monster Bash event every year, that is the singing of the Festival of the New Wine, which I think is a blast. I think it's a lot of fun. What do you think of that being in the movie?
Yeah, what I love about it is the way it ends, because Lon Chaney, the famous Lon Chaney move where he grabs somebody by the lapels and, "How dare you sing about I want to die," it just cracks me up. But because it's so abrupt, but it works within the film. And there's something about movies, not just horror movies, but just movies in general, Hollywood movies in the 30s and the 40s. They were just always figuring out ways to add in musical numbers. I was watching one of the Thin Man movies the other day, and right in the middle of it, Nick and Nora go to a nightclub, and there's this 5-minute long musical number, which really didn't have anything else to do with the film. But that's just, every studio, for whatever reason, tried to throw that in there, I guess.
Yeah. But in this movie, as you say, the Festival of the New Wine does kind of fit in with the theme of what's going on. I agree with you. I think it's a pretty good movie. I enjoy it. You think about the fact that, they did cut all of this material with Lugosi that we've never seen. If they had not done that, if they hadn't rushed the finishing fight as much as they did, this had the potential to be a true top tier Universal classic, don't you think?
Yeah, but you also have to remember, when we're talking about these movies that were made in the 1940s, their budgets were a lot lower. Their running times were a lot lower. They were more like B type productions. They were much more streamlined. They weren't like the movies of the 1930s, which had more atmosphere. The movies of the 1940s, some monster fans call it the Silver Age. The 1930s is the Golden Age. The Silver Age movies, especially from Universal, they were more almost like action adventures in a way.
Yeah,
they were made more for a younger audience. It was all about action and getting as much stuff in as you could. It was, and then some of the Universal 1940s movies are not that great. Though those are the ones I didn't pick. But I mean, the ones in the 1940s, I think, are made more for just general entertainment, so to speak.
Right. So Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, that comes out in March of 43. And then fall, early winter of 43, we have Son of Dracula, another movie with Lon Chaney Jr. This time he gets his turn as the Count, or as he likes to call himself in the movie, Count Alucard, which is really meant to hide his identity. After meeting the wealthy Catherine Caldwell on a trip in Budapest, the Count then makes his way to her plantation in the southern bayou of Louisiana. That is where he and Catherine plan to marry, and they want to create a new reign of terror. Now, some have claimed that Chaney was miscast as Dracula, but I vehemently disagree. I want to get your opinion on this. In my mind, Chaney looks sleeker and slimmer in this film than in many of his other movies. So he has a little bit of the look of the Count, but with more brute strength than his predecessor, Bela Lugosi. I think Chaney makes this work exceedingly well. What's your thought, Dan?
I totally agree with you on that. I've been reading and listening for years and years. All these people trash Lon Jr.'s Dracula, and he's miscast. He's too bulky. I don't understand why. Does every vampire have to be skinny? I don't get that one at all.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a great performance, and for me, he's almost a precursor to Christopher Lee's portrayal of Dracula, because he's very still. He has this commanding presence about him. He doesn't move or talk a lot. I mean, he commands. He's a very stern figure.
Yeah.
But he's definitely a Dracula you don't want to mess with. And the whole thing about, well, he wasn't Lugosi. Well, of course he wasn't Lugosi. He was Lon Jr. He's not going to play it like Lugosi. If he tried playing it like Lugosi, it would be even worse. I think he's a fine Dracula.
Yeah, you're right. Lugosi intimidates with his voice. Chaney intimidates with his physical presence. And the Christopher Lee thing, I think, is a really good comparison, which I hadn't thought of before. Another key player in this film, an actress named Louise Albritton. She is quite good as Catherine Caldwell, who also ends up being quite evil. She is his romantic partner in crime. And then we have some really strong supporting players like Universal favorite Evelyn Ankers. I want to get your opinion. Evelyn Ankers, she was in quite a few of the Universal Studios films, maybe most memorably as the love interest to Lawrence Talbot in the original Wolfman. Are you a big fan of Evelyn Ankers?
Oh, yeah. Obviously a gorgeous woman. Actually, in Son of Dracula, she really doesn't have all that much to do. She's the sister of Louise Albritton. And I have to say, Louise Albritton is really the star of this film. She's the one that instigates the plot. She's actually using Dracula to gain immortality. And she wants to take her boyfriend and turn him into a vampire and make him immortal. Right. So this is, once again, a 1943 film in which you have a leading lady who is definitely not a damsel in distress, is actually the instigator of the plot, is a much stronger character than anyone else in the film. And Louise Albritton, I think, is one of the best performances in any horror film in the 1940s. And something else about her character, I was thinking about this when I was thinking about things to discuss with you. Louise Albritton was wearing a black wig during this film, and she's dressed almost kind of like a Morticia Addams, Lily Munster, type of fashion. You could say Louise Albritton's character she's a goth chick. She loves the dead. She loves the night. She has all these speeches about, living in eternity and darkness and that sort of thing. So this movie really, I think, is very much ahead of its time.
Absolutely. It's a film that breaks ground. It was the first feature film to show the actual transformation of a man or a vampire into a bat. We'd never really seen that before. It is also the first production, I believe, from Universal that sets Dracula in the United States as opposed to the old world, traditional locations like Transylvania and England. So here we have the swampy regions of Louisiana, which really provide a nice backdrop for director Robert Siodmak making this a very creepy, very atmospheric film. And I think that just adds to its effectiveness. A very underrated movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. Anybody out there who hasn't seen it, and it may have been put off because, well, Lon Chaney Jr.'s Dracula. Trust me, that it's definitely one of the best Universal movies of the 1940s.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to a film that came out about a week later after Son of Dracula. This was a release from Columbia Pictures, The Return of the Vampire. So in this one, Bela Lugosi plays Armand Tesla, a vampire who was staked and killed by an English family during World War I. The family believes Tesla's gone forever, but hey, that never happens in the films of the 30s and 40s. There's always a return for these monsters. And in this case, Tesla makes a return during World War II when German bombs unwittingly free him from his grave. So he's brought back to life. He also seeks out the assistance of a werewolf who had once worked for him as a servant. And in an added twist, we have a werewolf that actually is able to speak, something that is very new. So let's talk about Return of the Vampire. Why do you like this one, Dan?
Well, it's ironic. The first two movies we talked about, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman and Son of Dracula, and you could technically say this is Dracula meets the Wolfman. And you could technically say this is Bela's 1940s Dracula movie, which he missed out playing Dracula again for Universal until Abbott and Costello beat Frankenstein. There's a whole big story behind that, whatever you want to believe. But the thing that's important when it comes to Bela Lugosi is that in this decade, he was making some really cheap, really, really low budget Poverty Row movies. Famously called the Monogram 9. He made 9 films for a very, very low budget independent outfit called Monogram. And most of them have wound up in the public domain. If you were buying VHS tapes in the 1980s, like at Kmart or something, I mean, these films were like a dime a dozen. You could find them everywhere. You can still find, cheap DVDs of them. And they're not very good for the most part. They're kind of entertaining if you get into the whole campy aspect of it. But here's Bela Lugosi. He's at a major studio. He has a major role. It's a decently budgeted film. It's basically probably the best film he made in the 1940s with himself as a lead. And yes, they couldn't use Dracula because of rights issues. That was, Universal had that. But obviously Columbia was they were that was their version of a Universal monster movie, and I think it comes off very, very well.
A lot of people look at this film and say, yeah, the names are changed, but this is basically Dracula. That's basically what Columbia was doing. Originally, Lugosi's character was going to be called Dracula. And this was going to be very much patterned after the Universal Studios stories. But Universal got wind of this, threatened a copyright lawsuit against Columbia. So Columbia, wanting to avoid going to court, changes the name of the vampire character, changes the names of the other characters. But the film still allows Lugosi basically to look and act like Dracula. So it's not Dracula in name, but it's Dracula and everything else.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this film, it is set in contemporary times. As you mentioned, it's World War II is going on, but it still has enough of the atmosphere and the ambience of a classic, horror film set in like the 19th century. So the way they do it once again, they did a great job setting it up like that. And that makes it stand out from the Universal films. Those films, you never really know what time period it is in. They kind of, waffle that a bit.
Yeah.
But this one, being set in a modern period, you don't even think about it. I mean, you understand it, but it's not something that is jarring or takes you out of the movie.
Yeah, it very much blends in right away. Something that is jarring is having the werewolf speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was played by an actor by the name of Matt Wills or Matt Willis.
Matt Willis, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's trying to do kind of like a Lon Jr. imitation. It's almost like a combination of Lawrence Talbot and his Lenny from Of Mice and Men, because he kind of just, is where Andreas, I believe, is the werewolf's name, and he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, basically. So I think they were kind of going, a double Lon characterization right there. It's different. I mean, it's I think it works within the film.
Yeah.
And one thing I have to point out, we were talking about, a strong female character in Son of Dracula. This one has the Van Helsing role is basically played by a woman, Frida Inniscourt, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, she's the strongest character in the film. She's the heroine, and all the men around her basically don't believe her, or they're basically useless. So she, give some props to her.
Yeah. Another actress with a prominent role is Nina Foch, and she's quite good too.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like kind of like the damsel in distress type. I think she was in another one from Columbia. I believe it was I cannot remember the name. Kind of like a werewolf story in a way, almost like a female werewolf story.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this movie. It's got a lot of atmosphere. It's got good pacing, fine performances. It also is one of only 3 films in which Bela Lugosi plays an actual vampire, which is kind of hard to believe.
Yeah.
You're talking about feature films. He only played a real vampire on 3 occasions. So it's got some value in that area too.
Yeah. And I've actually read some Lugosi fans who are not all that enthused about this film, and I'm like, you guys are crazy. I mean, look what he was doing at Monogram in the 1940s, and you're going to come down on this movie. Right. So it just shows you that sometimes the biggest fans are the ones that complain the most. I know all about that. Trust me, on the internet, go on the internet, try to talk about classic horror films with any of these people sometimes.
Oh yeah, I feel you on that one. All right, so we've looked at 3 films so far. Want to turn things over to Tracy for the next movie, and this is one that came out only one day after The Return of the Vampire. Tracy, tell us about this one.
So this one that we're going to talk about is The Mad Ghoul, and it was released November 12th, 1943. And the film starred David Bruce and Evelyn Ankers. And it's about a university chemistry professor who experiments with ancient Mayan gas on a medical student. These experiments, they go very badly. They turn one student into a very murderous ghoul. So this is the first time I sat down and watched this movie, and I loved it. I thought it was so unique. I'm curious to know your thoughts, and if you classify this movie as a horror flick or maybe more of a science fiction type film.
You can actually classify it as both. Mm-hmm. You're right, and it's unique, especially from the Universal perspective. It's actually pretty gruesome, because they're literally digging up bodies to get freshly laid bodies to get to the hearts of the corpses. Obviously there's no gore in it. It's a black and white film, it's of the period, but it for a Universal flick, it's like really, really nasty when you think about it. What I really love about this film is George Zucco, who plays the mad scientist, which he did several times. But I think this is like really his best overall performance in any horror film he did, because he's the star of the film. I mean, he's not the Mad Ghoul, although, well, technically, I don't want to give away the end of the story, but George Zucco is great British character actor, kind of almost a contemporary of Lionel Atwill, who we'll be talking about eventually. Mm-hmm. And George Zucco had a fantastic career as a supporting player in so many esteemed mainstream films, big budget, films. He worked for MGM a lot. And what he was so great in these lower budgeted horror films, I don't know if he enjoyed doing them, but what he was so great is he's so intense. I mean, he he doesn't like look down on the material. I mean, he plays it like he's playing Shakespeare on stage. He's really great
Right.
in this.
Yeah, no, he was really good. He was, like, really creepy in a weird
Mhm.
way, and you didn't know what to expect from this guy. You're just like, "Oh, he seems like a good guy. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, he's
Yeah.
not." Right. So, being a Universal movie, do you kinda classify this as fitting into the realm of the Universal monster film?
I don't know if they were. I don't know too much about the script development. I don't know if they were just trying to find, a different type of monster, because it really truly is a different type of monster.
Mhm.
The Mad Ghoul is actually David Bruce's character, and he's probably the most put upon character in Universal horror. I mean, number one, he doesn't know what's happening to him. It's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
That's
Number
right.
two, number two, at the beginning of the film, he's engaged to Evelyn Ankers, and she dumps him. And the poor guy, he gets dumped by Evelyn Ankers, and then he's turned into a murderer without his even knowing about it. Obviously, there wasn't going to be a happy ending to this film. And the subplot is George Zuko wants Evelyn Ankers, which you can't blame him for that. But
Mhm.
obviously, that's not going to happen. So there's all sorts of like weird, ghoulish things going on here, and I don't think the Mad Ghoul gets enough credit because Lon Chaney isn't in it, Lugosi, Karloff, but it really should. I think it's one of the, as you say, one of the most unique, individualistic of the Universal films, and Evelyn Ankers looks absolutely fabulous in this movie. And I believe
Mhm.
in the she does sing a couple times, and she was
Yeah.
a singer. I believe that is her singing. So
Really? I was
I,
curious. I was gonna ask you about that.
I believe so. Of course, I'm probably going to find out that I'm wrong. I would assume it would be her singing because, like I said, she was a trained singer, and that may have been the reason why Universal did this. To
Mhm.
maybe say, because I know she didn't like being in these movies. We'll discuss that later on. And they probably told her, well, in this movie, we'll let you sing, and Lon Jr. isn't around. So that might have been the two things that got her going on this one.
Oh my gosh, she did amazing. She was really good, and her singing was actually very lovely, but yeah, it was a really unique movie. So I guess I just have a couple more. The Mad Ghoul, in your opinion, do you think that he inspired sympathy, or was he just like truly just a monster? Like the whole ending of this story was just kind of like, I don't think I was expecting the way that it actually ended.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to be sympathetic toward him, but the poor
Mhm.
guy is just so put upon. It's it's almost too much. Like I said, he his fiance dumps him like even before the whole monster thing,
Right.
and
Oh my gosh.
that leads George Zuko to think, well, I got a chance. Well, of course, George Zuko and Evil Anchors aren't going to wind up at the end of any movie, but yeah, I
No.
mean, poor David Bruce, he's so put upon in this film. It's like you don't know whether to feel sorry for him or just, man, this guy's pathetic. you know.
He did really great though, and the
Oh,
makeup that they did for him, it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like,
Well, once
mm,
again, you got to give credit to Jack Pierce, the way he can just come up with these looks and these
mhm.
ideas and doing them one after another. I don't know whether David Bruce enjoyed doing it or not. Um, I've seen him in a couple other movies. He didn't have much of a career, but and
Mhm.
unfortunately, if anybody remembers David Bruce for anything, it's going to be for the Mad Ghouls. So
Oh, wow. Well, in your opinion, do you think that, if they were to kinda do, like, a reimagined version of this film today, do you think it would work, or do you think, like, that storyline is just too dated now?
I could see it, but it would be way. I mean, it would have to be a hard R. I mean, you can imagine how somebody would, seriously. I mean, just the whole digging up the corpses and cutting out the hearts and it, Yeah, I'm surprised somebody. I'm sure it's probably influenced a lot of films that we don't even think about.
Mm,
I could imagine somebody, like I said, redoing it, but it would be so graphic and so over the top. I think
yeah.
it probably fits more as a 1940s type of story where you don't have to worry about the gore or any of the that
Mhm.
stuff's under the table, so to speak. So
Oh, wow. And where does this one sit on your list? Is it, like, really high up on your list of favorites, or is it just kind of, like, in the middle somewhere?
yeah, I like it a lot for that period because
Mm,
once again, like I said, George Zuko, I think that's his best horror film performance, and he was in
mm.
a ton of these.
Oh, awesome. Um, so we're gonna move on to another one that I watched for the very first time, and it's called Weird Woman, and that was released on March 1st, 1944. So while traveling through the South Seas, a professor falls in love with an exotic native woman and decides to marry her, but she's hiding a secret. She's been raised by a group of superstitious natives who regard her as a supernatural being. So what do you think of this film? And do you think if it's more of like a supernatural thriller type or more of a noir melodrama type
Well,
situation?
this is part of a series that Universal did called the Inner Sanctum series.
Mhm.
It was based on a radio show, which
Yes.
I've never heard, so I don't really know.
Really?
I I mean I know about it, but I haven't heard any of the episodes.
Mhm.
So I'm not really all that don't have too much knowledge about the actual radio show. But this was Universal's. Once again, they were trying to build up Lon Chaney Jr. and they were giving him sort of non-monster roles in these supernatural thrillers. Unfortunately, a lot of these roles didn't fit Lon Jr. very well. The fact that he's supposed to be a professor at this college, a lot of monster fans like, yeah, right. but the reason I picked it, I think out of all the Inner Sanctum films, I think this is the best one.
Mm,
One main reason is Evelyn Ankers is the bad girl, which was very unusual for her.
right.
It has Anne Gwynn in it as Lon Chaney Jr.'s wife, and she's a 1940s scream queen. And there's another actress by the name of Elizabeth Russell, and she was a big, not a big star, but she was a major player in the Val Lewton series. So you have all these kind of, famous 1940s horror players in this one film.
Oh, nice. Um, do you think that the relationship with, um, Evelyn and Lon Chaney Jr., just because they've kind of had a very notoriously tense relationship throughout the different films that they've made. Um, she didn't really like working with him, and he didn't really like working with her too much. But do you feel like the real life dynamic helped her and helped him in this film?
Ah, it might have. You've heard so many things about. I mean, they were two totally different people. Obviously, I
Yeah.
mean, Lon Jr. was kind of a roughneck type of guy. He had plenty of personal issues. I don't really want to get into that. I mean, that take forever. Evelyn Anchor is a very dignified, lady.
Mhm.
She's actually English. I think she was born in Chile, from English parents, and she was
Really?
yeah, I mean, she was a singer, a professionally trained singer. She
Mhm.
had acted on stage, and she didn't really like being in these films, and her and Lon Jr. didn't get along too well. I think there was kind of sort of some jealousy between each other. They both, I don't know, felt that maybe Universal should have treated them better than the other one. Apparently, Evelyn Ankers was married to Richard Denning, another actor. And what's ironic about that is in the 1950s, Richard Denning made a series of science fiction films. So in a way, he was doing what his wife was doing in the 1940s. But it's famous among monster movie fans. Apparently, at a party or some sort of reception, Richard Denning and Lon Chaney Jr. got in a fight. So that obviously didn't help matters out.
Oh my goodness, no. I know Richard Denning from, radio dramas, actually. He played, oh my goodness, there was a radio drama series called My Favorite Husband, and he played the main character in that, which was the inspiration for the I Love Lucy
Oh,
episodes.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
Richard Denning was in Creature from the Black Lagoon.
that's right.
He was in I'm trying to think. He was in a number of science fiction movies in the 1950s. So
Wow. Yeah, he's a good guy. And just like on the whole Inner Sanctum, I was really fascinated. I didn't know Universal bought the rights to the Inner Sanctum kind of like brand. I love those radio dramas. You should definitely check them out. The episodes are only like maybe 20 minutes long, but they're really fun to listen to, especially this time of year where, it gets dark early. Just
Yeah.
put it on. You can find them all over YouTube, but they're so good. So good.
Well, you obviously you may know more. You obviously know more about the Inner Sanctum radio series than I do, but I believe Universal didn't even use any stories from that series. I think these were all like from novels or other sources of material. They basically just used the name of the show, and they had the opening with the weird, kind of head, inside a crystal ball, in introducing the movies, which I think that people probably know that more than they do anything that actually happened in the films. So
No, exactly. Oh yeah, definitely check them out. I'm gonna have to check out the other movies in the series too. I
yeah,
find it fascinating that Lon Chaney was in like there's only 6 of them, but he was in all of
yeah,
them.
he's like the star in all of them. I think I have it on DVD. I have the collection on DVD, but because it's the DVD, you can probably get it like at a pretty decent price. I think they were put out on Blu-ray. They're all like about like 60, 70 minutes long. They're not bad, but they're not at the same level as the Universal monster movies.
Mhm.
They're
Oh
they're more
wow.
for they're more, like I said, they're more for just seeing the Universal stars and starlets and like different type of roles, like Spot, the
Mhm.
character actor or whatever.
Oh, interesting. And just one more little follow-up. Now, Bruce might know more about this film. It's like Burn Witch Burn. It's kind of like a later adaptation of this movie. I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty sure Bruce has. But what do you guys think? How this movie, do you think it compares to the Weird Woman movie at all? Or do you think it's like completely different?
I've seen Burn Wish Burn. That's a very good film, but it's based on the same novel.
Hmm.
The English version, Burn Wish Burn, early '60s. I think it was the script was written by Richard Matheson, I believe, and that's a very good film. It's a lot more serious. It's a lot more somber in tone. It's longer than 60. It's not a B movie, is what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
There's some similarities in the story, but it's I think it's done a lot better than Weird Woman.
Interesting. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I haven't seen Weird Woman in a while, so I'd hesitate to compare, but I love Burn Witch Burn. I think that's
Mhm,
a great movie that doesn't get its full credit. It's really one of the early movies that really delves into witchcraft and satanic worship. The actor that stars in it, Peter Weingart, I believe,
Yeah.
outstanding actor. He was, I guess, initially not really favored by the producers because they felt he was a little bit too effeminate in his
Well,
manner and his
he's kind
behavior.
of if Peter Weingart, if you know anything about him, he's kind of like off kilter, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
He's not like a typical leading man type. There's always something like kind of weird about him.
right.
What one of his, I think he's more famous for like British television. He played a character. I think the character's name was Jason King in a couple of TV shows.
Yes, yes,
And I know this because my dear friend Veronica Carlson was on one of those episodes,
right.
Department S, and I think that spun off, and he had his own show. And and this was in the early '70s, and he wears these absolutely. I mean, you talk about '70s fashion with the white lapels and the bell bottom. I mean, today he looks ridiculous, but back then, I mean, his sideburns were like literally like the
Yeah,
biggest sideburns you've ever seen. Like if you see, just go online and you just Peter Weingart and look up pictures of him from that period. It's like you can't believe that they had a TV series starring a guy that looked like that. But back then,
yeah.
I guess he was like really popular. So
That's right. Now in Burn Witch Burn, he's very clean cut
Yeah, yeah,
and he's shirt and tie, button down shirts.
yeah, because he's playing a professor.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's a totally different look, but I thought he
Whoa.
was really good.
Oh, one thing I just remembered this. One thing about Weird Woman, and this is another example that Josh Kennedy and I always talk about how everything is connected. In Weird Woman, there's a character, Tracy may remember, of a young student who's jealous of Lon Jr. because he thinks Lon Jr. is hitting on his girlfriend in class.
Yes. Yes.
That young man was played by Phil Brown. Phil Brown was Uncle Owen in Star Wars.
Really?
Phil Brown
Interesting.
in a Universal horror film, and Phil Brown was also in a Hammer film, and he was in Star Wars. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Now that's a cool bit of trivia right there. Awesome.
Amazing connections. Yeah. That's great stuff.
So now you know why Uncle Owen was so grumpy in Star Wars, because he had to fight Lon Chaney Jr. for his girlfriend.
There you go. I love it.
All right, very good. So The Weird Woman, March of 1944, and then May of 1944, specifically May 26th, we have the release of The Scarlet Claw. And Dan, this one is new to me. I didn't see it until earlier this week. In fact, I just watched it last night. It is Sherlock Holmes film that introduces us to a killer who may or may not be a monster. So when Lady Penrose is found murdered, her throat completely torn out, this happening in the Canadian town of L'Amour Rouge, her husband is notified while attending a conference in Quebec. That same conference is attended by Holmes and Dr. Watson. Shortly thereafter, Holmes receives a letter from Lady Penrose. She had sent it just before her death and expressed concern that she was in great danger. Turned out she was right. So this letter prompts Holmes to enter the investigation, even though he's already been told by Lord Penrose, the husband, I don't want you involved. Keep out of it. But Holmes cannot do that. He is also very skeptical that the murderer is a monster. He always is very rational in his approach. He's looking for, human perpetrators, not supernatural ones, even though the locals seem to believe there is some sort of a monster involved. But again, Holmes believes there is a human killer responsible for what's going on. Now, Dan, this one, which I was really surprised by, because I don't necessarily think of Sherlock Holmes as horror, but this one does fall into that category. And some have actually called this the best of the Universal Holmes films that starred Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. I'm curious what you think of that.
Well, yeah, one of the reasons I picked it is I think it is one of the, maybe not the best, but certainly one of the better of those films. And it does have a lot of horror qualities to it. It's set in a French Canadian village. All these Sherlock Holmes films were set in the 1940s, but this French Canadian village that it's set in, it's a very small village. It has the bar or the tavern where all the suspicious villagers, superstitious villagers sit around. And of course, it's somebody who's a stranger walks into the tavern, everybody stops what they're doing and they give them a dirty look and, that type of thing. So it feels like a 19th century type of location, which it basically is. I mean, it is set in 1944, 43, but you don't feel that way. It could very easily be a Conan Doyle story from the 19th century, even though it was not based on anything written by Conan Doyle, which makes it even more unique. But it's still a very good film, very atmospheric. Roy William Neill, who directed Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, he was the producer and the director on most of the Sherlock Holmes series. That Universal basically gave it to him, and he knew his stuff. He knew how to craft these films and give them enough atmospherics and enough of a kind of a horror type of tinge. I wish Roy William Neill had did more of the straight Universal monster movies. I think they probably would have came out a little bit better, but he was probably too busy working on Sherlock Holmes. I think Universal just didn't want him, they wanted him to focus on that.
One of the really good things about this movie, Dan, is the way they sustain the mystery, pretty much up until, the last 10 minutes or so. And early on, one of the people that I thought might have been the killer, I don't want to give this whole thing away, but
Yeah.
Lord Penrose, the husband,
Mm-hmm.
so when he got the news that his wife had been killed, he's at the conference, he gets this phone call, and the way he handles it, he doesn't seem all that upset. You know,
Yeah.
to handle the news that your spouse has just been murdered, and you know, you'd be hysterical, any normal person, and he's kind of matter of fact about it.
Yeah, well, once again, it's a mystery, and they're setting it up so you have all these, different characters. I mean, all the Sherlock Holmes movies were like that. But the other thing about this film, you basically have a serial killer. I mean, he does have a reason. I'm certainly not legitimizing his actions, but for his own in his own mind, he has a reason why he's doing this. But he's technically a serial killer.
Yeah. He's also a master of disguise, so you don't really know who it is until the final act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out, because I watched Scarlet Claw recently again because I knew we were going to talk about it. There's one scene, and I don't want to give away too much, but I do have to point this out, because when I watched it again, this scene struck me because it reminded me of something in Cape Fear. Because there's a scene where the killer dresses as the maid inside the victim's house. So the victim is just seeing the maid in the background and not, doesn't even notice her. And then the maid, who is not the maid, it's the murderer, kills the victim. And I thought, my God, that's Cape Fear. So once again, you're talking about something in one of these movies where it looks forward to something made 70, 80 years later.
Yeah. Dressed to Kill?
Yeah. Yes.
Another one. Yeah.
That's one as well.
Now, I have to admit, I haven't seen a lot of the Rathbone Bruce films in the Sherlock Holmes series. So I wanted to ask you, is Watson always portrayed in such a way by Nigel Bruce? He's falling into bogs,
Yeah.
falling down stairs. He's an absolute klutz. Is that always like that?
Yeah. There's a lot of Holmes fans that, once again, they look, oh my God, it's terrible. But you have to understand, these movies were made for a general audience. He's like the comic relief.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they decided to play it. And they just took it all the way through that series. I enjoy these films. When I was a kid, me living in South Bend, the Channel 9 WGN out of Chicago, every weekend they would show one of these movies. I mean, these movies for independent TV stations showed these things all the time when I was a kid. So I have this sort of familiarity with them. They're almost like comfort food in a way. The people that are really, really major Holmes enthusiasts, they get all bent out of shape about these movies. And it's like, considering some of the Holmes material that has been made in the 21st century, I mean, these movies look even more and more authentic as the years go by. So,
well, I think one of the reasons for that, you watch Basil Rathbone, and he was just so good in these roles. He just seemed like a perfect fit.
Oh yeah, I mean, once again, these are lower budget, almost like B movies, and they were cranking these things out. Universal wanted to make more and more and more of them. I think they had some sort of agreement with the Doyle estate. I don't know how long that agreement was, but I think a lot of it was just Rathbone. He just, he was making, I think they made like 10 or 12 of them in like a 4 or 5 year period. And Rathbone Rathbone was playing, he and Nigel Bruce were also playing Holmes and Watson on radio. And they did that for years. And I think Rathbone just got burned out. He said, he considered himself to be this esteemed, accomplished actor, which he was.
Yeah.
And you think about all the movies he made with Errol Flynn. He was nominated for Academy Awards. He was in, big, major productions. He co-starred with the biggest stars of the day. And he was getting tired of going out on the street, people saying, "Hey, Sherlock, how you doing?" So I'm sure Universal wanted to make more and more of them. I think Rathbone just got burned out. He just got tired.
Yeah, I think in total he did 14 of these movies.
Yeah.
And, this one was really good. It's legitimately horror. It's legitimately mystery, legitimately thriller. Kind of combines all those genres very well in The Scarlet Claw. All right, Dan, we've got two more movies to talk about, and they're both great, at least in my mind. We'll get your thoughts on them. First up is a film from 1945, came out on February 7th, Hangover Square. So this is the last performance of the tragically short career for Laird Cregar, and he plays George Harvey Bone, a brilliant composer residing in Victorian London. Bone is blacking out repeatedly. When he wakes up or comes to, he finds himself somewhere else that he doesn't remember how he got there, no memory of what has occurred. And on a few occasions, he learns that a murder has taken place during one of these blackouts. Naturally, he wonders if he's the one who's committed the crime. To make matters more complicated, Bone seems to have a wonderful girlfriend in Barbara Chapman, played by Faye Marlowe, but he foolishly becomes involved with this character Netta, played by Linda Darnell. Netta is a singer and a dancer at a tawdry nightclub, and it's obvious she's only using him so that he can produce hit songs that she can use in her act. Now, our friend Greg Mank has talked about what a monumental performance Cregar delivered in the lead here. Are you as high on Cregar as Greg is?
Oh yeah. And of course we have to mention Greg Mank wrote a biography of Laird Cregar.
Yeah.
Magnificent volume of work. Of course, it's Greg Mank, so you know it's going to be magnificent. But Laird Cregar he's a fascinating person. He died very, very young, very tragic. But every performance he gave in a film, he steals the film. I mean, he was a very big, bulky guy. If you know who Victor Buono is, he played King Tut in the Batman TV series. He was kind of like a Victor Buono type, but he just stole films from everybody. He had such a unique presence, and he was very, very young, but you'd swear he was like in his 40s or his 50s. He just had this kind of quality where you'd think he'd been acting for decades and decades and decades, and he really didn't have a very long career. And
absolutely, yeah.
One thing that's interesting about this film is George Harvey Bone is mentally unstable. And unfortunately, at this point, Laird Cregar was so obsessed with losing weight. He was a very big, overweight guy for that period, especially. You didn't see, men and people in movies getting the big roles that he did who were, weighed that heavy. And he was desperately trying to lose weight, to change his image. In this film, he's clean shaven. In most of his movies, he wears mustaches or beards. And he looks kind of, if you're familiar with him and his other work, he looks without the mustache, and he's lost a little bit of weight, but you can tell that physically there's something not right. You can tell that, he's going through a lot. Obviously the character's going through a lot, but unfortunately it's almost like what the character is going through is mirroring what he's going through in real life. You can tell, yes, he's playing a disturbed character, but you can tell there's something going on in Laird Cregar's real life at the time. He just doesn't look right in this film, I think.
You're absolutely 100% right. I was going to bring this up. He looks like he is sick. The actor looks like he's physically ill during the film, even though he's lost a lot of weight. He was at over 300 pounds. He's probably down closer to 220, 200, something like that. So he's lost about 100 pounds, but he's lost it so quickly. He doesn't look right. And yet that fits in with this character because this character is mentally not right.
Yeah. This character just doesn't fit in. And there's this sense of loneliness to the character and this sense of befuddlement. Once again, it's a great performance, but it's a very sad performance because obviously there's something going on in this man's real life that is affecting this performance. So in a way, you almost feel bad complimenting it.
Some other actors are very good in this. Linda Darnell, who would die tragically at a young age, not that many years later. George Sanders, who plays a police psychologist, in real life was very good friends with Cregar, but here he suspects that Cregar's character, Bone, is responsible for the killings that are taking place. One thing that really puzzled me was the way that and I mentioned this, George Harvey Bone, he has this beautiful girlfriend, Barbara. I think she's better looking than Netta, and she's a lot nicer. And yet he's like, I'm going to dump you for this other one who's just using me.
Hey, Bruce, men have been doing that forever. Trust me. It's like, oh, the good girls always go for the bad guys.
Yeah.
I don't want to reveal too much, but I can totally understand. I think Linda Darnell is incredibly sexy in this film. You from my perspective, you can totally understand why a guy like George Harvey Bone would basically get down, would do anything for Netta, because Linda Darnell she's not in this film very long.
No.
Once again, she's almost like Laird Cregar. Linda Darnell, whenever you see her in a movie, it's like, wow, she, makes a huge impression, and she basically steals the film, I think.
Yeah.
For once again, in 1940s, obviously you can't show too much, but she's just absolutely smoldering in this film.
Yeah. Well, I would go for Faye Marlowe, but
yeah,
everybody has.
It's not like Faye. It's not like I would reject Faye Marlowe, but
no. My one criticism of the movie, they make it fairly obvious from the start that George is the killer, because you see it right in the very first scene when some shop owner is attacked, and then you see George Harvey Bone. So they're not hiding that. Would it have been smarter to make this more of a mystery and maybe create the illusion that perhaps someone else is responsible? Because you almost want Bone to be innocent, but he's not.
Yeah, but I think also we haven't mentioned this. This film was a follow-up to The Lodger, which also starred Laird Cregar, it was made the year before, in which he basically plays Jack the Ripper. And Laird Cregar didn't always play, but for the most part, he was villain. Played villain. So I think the audience, I don't think it would have been much of a mystery of Laird Cregar. Who else is going to kill all these people?
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because, this is a 1940s film in which the killer is the main character. And it's almost like examining the bad guy. And that's something that in the modern era happens all the time. If anything, the serial killer gets more attention than just about any other character in horror films and thrillers.
Right.
And I think this this is a major studio release from that point in time, 20th Century Fox, I believe, to have the killer basically be like the main character and not, try to explain it away like, oh, it's a dream, or give him some excuse or whatever, and just come out and say, yeah, this guy's it, and what he's going through. That's very, very interesting choice, I thought.
Yeah. Well, it's a great movie nonetheless. The performance by Cregar is Hall of Fame material. Supporting cast is very good. It is beautifully shot. Lots of atmosphere in England. Really well done film. The conclusion is pretty spectacular.
Yeah,
it's one of the better conclusions to that era of a film.
Yeah, and I was going to mention Bernard Herrmann's score, because at the end of the film, George Harvey Bone plays his great work, this great piano concerto, which of course was actually composed by Bernard Herrmann. And it's a fantastic piece of music because the music builds as the scene builds. And it builds literally to a climax that burns the house down. And it's just absolutely incredible piece of music from Bernard Herrmann. That's one of his scores that nobody really talks about. They talk about the Hitchcock scores and the ones he did for the Ray Harryhausen movies. I actually have it on CD.
Really?
Yeah, I found it not that long ago on CD, and I'm glad I have it because it's just really it's very striking and an amazing score.
As we mentioned, Cregar, a tragic figure. He lost all that weight in too short a period of time. December 9th, 1944, not too long after the filming concluded, he suffered a heart attack while in the hospital. A few hours later, a second heart attack, which took his life at the age of 31. So he never saw this film in theater. He died 2 months before the release of the movie. only 31, a brilliant career, but an all too short career for Laird Craigar. One more film to talk about, and it's a real favorite. It's from February 14th, 1945, so it came out 1 week after the Laird Craigar film, and that would be The Body Snatcher. So this is a Val Lewton, Boris Karloff classic centering on Dr. Wolf Toddy McFarlane and his strange relationship with cabman John Gray. Gray is played brilliantly by Boris Karloff. He provides the doctor with fresh cadavers for medical research purposes, but also torments him with reminders of one of his past sins. In the meantime, we have a medical student who's consulting the doctor, hoping that he can help a young girl regain the use of her legs. But he eventually realizes that this cab driver is obtaining the bodies through murderous means. And he wonders, how much more do I want to get involved in all this? Karloff gives Gray a nuanced portrayal. He's friendly and charming on the surface, especially with children, but completely wicked in the ruthless ways that he pursues and even creates corpses. I look at this and I'm tempted to say this is the best performance of Karloff's career, even better than what he did with the Frankenstein movies. What do you think, Dan? Is this his best?
It's definitely one of his best. I think the original Frankenstein monster, I think, has to be his best overall performance. But this one is right up there. You could say it's 1A and 1B. What he does with Gray is just absolutely magnificent. Yes, he's the villain, but there's, like you said, there's so many layers and nuances to it. This is someone who he kills a dog with a shovel, okay? And you think, oh my God, this must be terrible. But he has so much vitality in this role. He's playing a cabman, somebody that is, obviously has lived a hard life, doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't have a lot of status in society, but yet this character basically controls this doctor, played excellently by Henry Daniell. You could almost say this is Henry Daniell's best performance in his career, and he was a fine supporting actor. Henry Daniell is someone with status and upper class and a famous renowned doctor, but he's under the thrall of this lowly cabman because Dr. McFarlane worked with Dr. Knox, who was the doctor in Edinburgh who obtained bodies from the notorious Burke and Hare. So this is kind of a Burke and Hare movie, but it isn't. It's almost like an epilogue to the Burke and Hare story.
You mentioned Henry Daniell, and the film's director, who's a great director, Robert Wise, once said this of Daniell, quote, "He'd walk onto the set, do his work like a pro that he was, do it damn good, and then quietly leave without being a burden to anybody." So Wise obviously thought very highly of Daniell, and of course thought very highly of Karloff. We should mention Bela Lugosi has a small role as a character named Joseph, an assistant of the doctor, who ends up engaging in a deadly confrontation against Cabman Gray. The film does mark the final time we would see Lugosi and Karloff together on the screen, but Lugosi has such a small role and doesn't share that much screen time with Karloff. When I first saw this, I was a little disappointed by that. There's not much to criticize here, but the small role for Lugosi, that was disappointing. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, I remember when I first saw this, I was like a teenager and I was still getting into being a film buff and everything. And yeah, because they're billed, I think, above the title, Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, RKO signed Karloff and Lugosi to a contract and to put them in for the specific reason for Val Lewton to use them. And Val Lewton's whole thing, and for those who don't know Val Lewton, he was a producer that RKO hired to make a series of low-budget horror films in the Universal style, and he decided to go totally away from that.
Yeah.
And not make them like Universal. And he made very famous titles, Cat People, I Walk with a Zombie. I personally think The Body Snatcher is the best overall Val Lewton film.
Yeah.
But, look, Val Lewton and Karloff really, really hit it off because at first Val Lewton didn't want to use Karloff because he thought, I'm going to have to, make it like a Universal type thing. And then he realized what a erudite, intelligent person Karloff was, which Val Lewton was as well. So they worked very, very well together. I think Lugosi, as so many times in Lugosi's career, he was kind of like the odd man out. He wasn't, and I'm not saying Lugosi wasn't an intellectual. He was in his own way, but I don't think he ever, he never really palled around with Karloff or socialized with him. And I don't think he and Val Lewton had any type of relationship whatsoever. It was like, well, you got to use this guy so we can put him in the credits, and this could be a Karloff and Lugosi movie.
Yeah. Sharon Moffat plays the young girl who's essentially not able to walk, and she's the one who needs the treatment, needs the operation from Dr. McFarlane. She used to attend quite a few of the Monster Bash conventions we talked about earlier. Do you ever have a chance to meet Sharon Moffat?
No, I didn't. I can't remember if, for whatever reason, I just never got a chance to talk to her at one of the conventions, or she may have been at the ones that I missed for whatever reason. So no, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk to her.
Yeah, she had great things to say about Karloff. She passed away only a couple of years ago, but I did get a chance to see her speak at least once at Monster Bash, which was a nice opportunity. This is a great movie. This is one of my favorite horror films in my mind. This is like top 20, top 25.
Oh yeah, it has a lot of atmosphere. And the one thing about the Val Lewton series, he really wanted to not only set these in contemporary times, he wanted to set them in like ordinary, everyday locales and situations in America. He didn't want to make the universal type movie where it's set in Europe. You don't know what time period it is, some like fictional country, or, the town of Assyria or whatever. But ironically, my favorite Val Lewton films are The Body Snatcher, Isle of the Dead, and Bedlam, all three of them starring Karloff, and all three of them set in a historical period. I honestly think the Lewton effect, or the Lewton aura, or however you want to describe it, I actually think that works better in a historical period than it did in a contemporary setting.
Yeah. Well, we're obviously both fans of The Body Snatcher. So of all these 8 movies that you selected for us, is there one that stands at the top of the mountain for you?
I'd have to say The Body Snatcher, because just from Karloff's performance, Henry Daniel, the setting of the film. Obviously, they didn't film in Scotland in 1945, but it just has just fantastic atmosphere, great directions by Robert Wise. There's definitely a sense that, yes, The Body Snatcher is a horror movie. If you go online, you see the posters for it. It almost, the posters are designed like a universal horror film, but it's at another level, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So the 8 movies that we have talked about, they're all worth seeing. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, Son of Dracula, The Return of the Vampire, The Mad Ghoul, Weird Woman, The Scarlet Claw, Hangover Square, and of course, The Body Snatcher. Our thanks go out to Dan Day for joining us. Dan, remind folks where they can find your writing on the internet.
Well, I write the Hitless Wonder Movie Blog, Dan Day Jr. 35, blogspot.com. I try to write about maybe 8 or 9 blogs a month when I get a chance to it. I don't just write about horror or monster movies or science fiction movies. I mean, that's one of my main themes, but whatever catches my fancy, I guess you could say.
Yeah. What's been one of your recent articles that really drew your interest?
I'm trying to remember what I wrote. That's pretty bad.
Other than the podcast, of course, which I'm sure you're going to write about at some point, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what have I written recently.
Yeah.
No, there's been a couple of box sets, Blu-ray box sets from Eureka Entertainment, which is actually a British company, I believe, and they're starting to sell Region A box sets in America, obviously Region A, and these are German krimi films, crime films, the Edgar Wallace films. They've released 2 major box sets of these, and you could find these on you could find them on YouTube. You used to find them on low rent, DVDs, public domain DVDs, but these are remastered. They're in widescreen. They look fantastic. And for those of you who love horror films or science fiction films or old mysteries, and you think you've seen everything, most Americans haven't seen these crimies. And they're a revelation because they're almost like washing the kitchen sink, because everything is in them. You've got mystery, you've got horror, you've got science fiction, you've got gangsters, film noir. They just throw everything in there. And they're real, very, very entertaining films.
And how do you spell that word?
Krimi, capital KRIMI. That's a German term for crime film.
Oh, okay.
And most of them are based on British author by the name of Edgar Wallace, who will probably be best known for monster movie fans. He was one of the original scriptwriters of the 1932 King Kong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was brought over by at one point in the 1920s and the 1930s. From what I've read, Edgar Wallace was one of the biggest selling authors in the world. He was like on a Stephen King level. Nobody knows who he is today, but for whatever reason, the Germans are obsessed with his writing, and they made a series of films. And most of these films have nothing to do with Edgar Wallace, but they put his name on on the credits, and just a series of films that lasted for like decades, almost like they had a run like Hammer in a way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, make sure you check out Dan Day's blog. It's the Hitless Wonder Movie Blog. Yeah, a lot of it is horror, but he does, as you say, delve into other genres as well. And has voluminous knowledge. He's just seen seemingly thousands of films. As soon as this show is over, he'll be watching something else. Dan,
I'll be watching the White Sox getting killed by the Yankees as soon as we leave. So
okay, yeah, that's your second choice. White Sox baseball. Thank you, Dan. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Our guest has been Dan Day. We thank him. We thank Tracy as well. We thank all of you for joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we do hope we'll see you again next time, right here in the Ghostly Gallery.